En el mundo de los alimentos y las bebidas fermentadas, escuchamos muchas veces la historia de gente que empezó desde cero con una idea única de negocios. Y muchas veces también escuchamos la historia de gente que tuvo una preparación académica para llegar a donde están hoy día. Esta semana tuve la oportunidad de estar en el Brewers Conference en Providence, Rhode Island. Y mientras estuve allí me encontré con Marisa Bernal. Marisa tiene una historia única de cómo ella entró en el mundo de la cerveza en un tipo de negocios o en un modelo de negocios que no es muy común. Y este es el modelo de la compañía Look Cinemas. Esta entrevista fue grabada en el VIG, que es una barra dentro del Hotel Hilton en Providence, Rhode Island, y fue grabada en inglés. Así que si tienen preguntas o dudas, ya saben dónde contactarme. Espero que disfruten esta entrevista tanto como yo disfruté grabándola. Bienvenidos a The Food Engineer Podcast, un podcast dedicado a la exploración de alimentos y bebidas fermentadas. Yo soy tu anfitrión, Cristian Mercado. Welcome to a new episode of the Food Engineer Podcast. Today we have a special guest, Marisa Bernal from Look Brewing and Cinemas. We are today in Providence, Rhode Island at the Master Brewers Conference. Marisa, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for having me. This is exciting.
Thank you for accepting this invitation. I've brought Marisa here today because, number one, she's a specialist in beer. Like we all know, we bring a lot of specialists to this podcast, and she works in a brewery that has a very unique setting. But before we get to that, Marisa, would you like to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. I was born and raised in Albuquerque, New Mexico. From there, I went to school at Texas A&M, so I am definitely a loud and proud Texas Aggie, and I always will be. It's there that I fell into fermentation science. I studied food science and technology while I was there, and how I got into the whole alcohol industry was I woke up one morning after a night out, called my sister, who's one of my best friends, and I was like, hey, I want to be a winemaker, just on a whim. Didn't really think about it. And she's like, oh, you're drunk. Go back to sleep. I was like, okay. So went back to sleep, woke up a few hours later, and she goes, hey, she called me again, and she goes, hey, I have an internship set up for you in California. You're going there in about 3 months. And I was like, well, that was fast. Okay, cool. How'd you do that? And one of her best friends from high school, their family owns a vineyard out in California. And so it was kind of like this whole little kind of who you know thing. So I got very fortunate. Went out there and did the internship. And then they called me back the next year and got to do the internship again. But this time it turned into a full-time job from the internship. So I stayed out there. I was a cellar tech for them, but I also got to work in the lab as well. And I did that for about 3 years and found out that I really just preferred beer. Like at the end of the day, at the end of a harvest day, you're working 12, 14, 16-hour days, and the last 2 hours is just cleanup. So during those cleanup times, you go and grab your beverage of choice. Mine was always a beer. And so we were located in Templeton, California, which is where Firestone Walker is. So I always had a great beer selection while I was there during cleanup. Yes. It was amazing.
You were spoiled for choice.
Oh, very spoiled. And the company I worked for was called Epic Wines. They were incredible. They would always have, they'd ask you like, hey, what do you want this week? And they'd go get you what you wanted. So it was very nice. Cool. Yeah, but then once I realized that like wine, I wasn't that great at tasting wine. I could talk you through it. I could tell you if it's good wine or if it had some flaws, but I couldn't break it down. Like some people can break it down to the vintage, to all the different details of it. I can't do that. I tried. It was very difficult for me. From there, I moved back home with my parents in New Mexico, And my dad was like, you can sit on the couch for 2 weeks and you got to find a job. I was like, okay, deal. Went to Italy with my sisters for 3 weeks. So naturally, why would I do that? Why would I actually just sit on the couch for only 2? Got back and became the assistant brewer for Flick's Brew House in Albuquerque. I was a little hesitant at first, though, honestly. I didn't know if joining the beer industry, if it would ruin my love for craft beer, because I'd be around it all the time. Mm-hmm. But I was like, you know what? I'll go in for the interview, see what happens. I went in for the interview, and before they even offered me the job or anything, I was walking out. I was like, I got this job. I got it. It's mine. Done. Nice. A few hours later, they called me and asked me to come back in and sign papers. I did. And then I worked with them from 2016 until the fateful days of 2020. Good old COVID-19 hit it.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's interesting how you mentioned that after a good harvest day, you'll have a beer. And you're actually not the first person that I've heard saying that. In fact, there's a couple out there in California that owns a very small vineyard, and you see their pictures on social media, and every day after harvest they're drinking beers, which is pretty cool.
It's an easy drinking beer. Like, so at the end of the day, did I want a glass of wine? Like, that just sounds more of a heavy hitter than I can just have a nice relaxing lager. Why not?
Yeah. No, I feel you. I know that from personal experience when it comes to hard work, I always want a lighter lager on my hands, and Definitely. Then I can work my way up.
I'm a huge lager fan, though. Give me a beautiful Pilsner, a Helles, any day.
Same here.
Yeah.
Marisa, how do you end up working at Look Cinemas?
When I went and worked with Flick's back as an assistant brewer, they gave me a promotion to be a head brewer in Chandler, Arizona if I moved. I did. I was like, okay, let's go. So when I did that, though, COVID hit. And then from there, I went and did a year at Mark Anthony Brewing. I made White Claws and Mike's Hard Lemonade for a year. I was a lead brewer for them. But the drive was literally 59 miles each direction from my house. Wow. And I know some people would make that commute daily. I didn't want to do that, plus the 12-hour shifts they had us on for a while there. So it was just a long drive. Great. I learned so much from them. I will be forever grateful for what I learned while I was there. But when the opportunity came to go back to the building I had already created with Flicks, it was the exact same building, and it's called Look now. I took it. So Look was looking for someone to help set their brewery back up and like consult for them. And then I asked him, I was like, well, who's your brewer? They didn't have one yet. So I was like, oh, well, ask me. And so we talked everything out, and that's how I got it. Look, but I'd already built that building. The building that that we're in now, it was actually Flick's Brew House prior. And so it was just going home.
Okay. It's pretty close enough. And it's such an interesting change of ambiance that you've done more than once then, because from food science to wine to a pretty big operation, Mark Anthony, right?
Yeah, it was, yeah, you're right. So it was food science, wine, small 7-barrel craft brewery to huge 1 million square foot, or what was it? Yeah, 1 million square foot facility with Mark Anthony back to a 7-barrel brew house.
How do you feel about that change?
Loved it. Yeah. I love it. I run the entire brewery. I don't have an assistant or anything. So start to finish, I do the entire brewery myself.
It's pretty physical work, isn't it?
It is, but it's a lot of fun. I'm not one to sit at a desk. I have a hard time sitting still for that long. I have to be doing something. All power to people that can sit at a desk all day. Wow.
I've had my fair share of both, and I think I side with you on that. Just being able to move around and do what you want.
Yeah.
And do you feel that you have a different perspective on the product when you're dealing with a 7-barrel system versus a huge system that produces multiple seltzers and beers?
Yeah, I think so. I find that I have a lot more creative freedom being on my 7-barrel system, so I can kind of go with what's popular at that time a lot quicker than when you're making huge seltzer flavors. You have to plan it out months, if not years in advance of what you're going to create. And yeah, they keep it pretty much the same, but mine I get to change it up. So
right.
If I want to add different fruits to a beer, I can. If I just want to make a different style, I can do. If I want to create a beer that has a twist to it, I'm a classical brewer, though. I like brewing to style, which I've had to get out of my comfort zone a little bit because so surprise if you guys haven't figured this out. The concept with Look is it's a movie theater as well. So we have our movie theater. So I do all my beers are released with movies.
Okay.
So if there's a big movie release coming out, like especially like Marvel films, a lot of Disney films, I will do a beer for it. And so you get to tie it in with that. So we just had, what was the big one that just came out? Thor, Love and Thunder. So I did a Love and Raspberry. So I did a sour base, but I did a raspberry sour for it. And so you get to do that. You get to do play on names. Like we have a beer coming up. It's the new Black Panther movie. So, Wakanda. We're calling it Beerconda.
Nice.
So you can just kind of do play on names with stuff like that. It'll be a Belgian Tripel for that, but...
Do you find that because your operation has the movie theater and the brewery, there's a lot, and this is my assumption perhaps, that there's less red tape when it comes to freedom of naming your beers and also being flexible with what you make?
The hard part is we have to be careful with copyright for beer naming. I have a team, and my marketing team is very big on this, that they are very careful with how we name beers too, because the worst thing you want is to have a studio get upset in any way, because we need their movies. So you got to tiptoe that line a little bit. So they do correct me on some of the names I've chosen. They will be like, hey, we got to go with a different name. I'm like, okay, fine, we can do that. But they pretty much let me do whatever name-wise.
That's pretty awesome, just having that amount of creative freedom and being able to make the beer, name the beer, and also have it in a context that you may have control of the variables that surround your consumers. So as a food scientist, you know that the place where you're having your drink can have a big impact on how people perceive it. In fact, there's been studies where people get on a VR set, they have the same beer in what seems like a virtual reality bar versus a virtual reality concert, and some people even identify the beer as being a different one.
Interesting.
So
yeah, I could see that. So when you think of a big movie theater, because you order it while you're in the theater. So there's a little QR code. You scan the QR code and you order it directly from your phone, and then the beer, food, whatever you order gets delivered. So when you're doing that, though, you're not going to sit, if you're watching a big movie and it's a big action-packed movie, or anything you're truly entranced in that, you're not going to sit there and be like, oh, let me try that really crazy beer. Let me try that one. Oh, it's got all this stuff in it. No, if you're an IPA guy, you're going to find that first IPA on the list and you are going to literally click on it. That's kind of, so I do have to have a lot of I get to be creative, but then it kind of plays into my book where I get to be a classical brewer, where I get to make the beers and people are like, okay, if that's the style I like, oh, I like Belgians. There's a Belgian, click it.
Does that influence how many of each style do you offer?
Kind of. I have 5 mainstay beers that are on year-round. I have 11 serving tanks, so I have quite a bit of space up there. But I have 5 main beers. Like you have your blonde, you have your Scottish ale, a hazy IPA, a West Coast IPA, and a honey wheat. So those are my 5 mainstays, and then from there I get 6 other ones I get to play with.
All right.
And I can do kegs as well. If I want to do a little keg manipulation, add a different fruit to something, I can.
Like you can do something like what Duckfish does with the Randall, and
Yeah.
you can filter things through a different medium to get that flavor extraction, or just you can dry hop on the kegs.
I'll just do a dry hop into a keg. I go homebrew style and do it in a corny, and then
That's awesome.
put it over to a keg. Yeah. You got to get creative. Being in a small brewery, there's a lot of ways you can get super creative and get things done.
Talking about creative, the whole model of having a brew pub or a brewery will inherently have a different way of managing it, and how do you end up making your money out of it, right? How does a model where you have movies, food, and beer, how does that work? What makes it be so unique, and what makes it tick?
You get all the good things in one place. So specifically being in Arizona, since we're located right near Phoenix, it's really hot. In the summertime, it's hot, so you want to escape. So a lot of people go to a movie. They go do an indoor activity. Well, while you're in the movie, why not make it a full date night or day date, where you just go, you have your instead of dinner and a movie, you go dinner, movie, all in one. So it kind of gives you that. But then right now you still have people that are so into craft beer. Throw that in the mix. You have the whole party.
Right.
And then also in our lobby we have a bunch of big TVs that are sports, that are always sports. So we kind of bring everyone into it.
All right. So when you have this mixture of these variables, you might be able to bring in a different type of public. How do you approach introducing craft beer to someone that perhaps is not knowledgeable of it, or could be perhaps a little bit intimidated by its complexity?
Honestly, I would say I have an amazing bartending staff. Our bartenders are great, and they want to keep learning, and they're very friendly. So they want to know about the beer. I go in with them as much as I can. I probably should do it a bit more and actually get them more engaged with the beer. They know our 5 mainstays. I need to be better about like our seasonals, but they are very engaging, and they will talk to anyone, and they will just keep talking to them. And I think that's a way you get people involved also. You have our greeters that'll be, if someone walks in and they have some time, they're like, hey, why don't you go over to the bar? And they'll like not push them that way, but like guide them that way. And then you have the bartenders that take it from there, and they'll be like, okay, what can we get you? We've got these beers. And if someone goes, well, I don't know exactly what kind of beer I want or like, they know where to start them, which is typically our blonde. Start out something light, and if they say, okay, well, maybe you want to go something a little more fruity, you can go fruitier. They can take it from there. But that's where I would direct them to, is I would just go talk to the friendliest people in the building. Go to our bartenders.
All right. You bring a good, important point there, which is that connection with the front of the house staff and making sure that everybody remains knowledgeable of your offer. Talking about knowledge and perhaps deviating a little bit from the topic of Look Cinemas, how do you see yourself when it comes to these events like the Brewers Conference or the Brewing Summit? What value does that bring to people that are in the beer industry?
Oh, it's incredible. Going to these events, you learn a lot in the lectures you attend. You learn like where you want to take your studies, like where you want to continue from. You learn a lot from meeting people. So as you go to these, like who put us connected was Barbara Stone. She is the reason I know so many people in the industry. I met her a few years ago at a Master Brewers Brewing and Malting Science course. And from then it's always like, hey, I need to connect you with this person. You need to connect with this person. And we just keep going back and forth with stuff like that. And it's really about like the beer industry in general is very friendly. Mm-hmm. We are a very open and welcoming group that if you have a question or you need help, just ask. And if the person you're asking directly doesn't know, they'll be like, you know what? I haven't had that problem, or I haven't really looked into that. Let me put you in touch with this person over here. And these events are really, I find them to be very much more of a networking facet, really.
Yeah. And not to turn this around to me, but I found there's a lot of receptiveness with these folks and these groups, and you get to meet very interesting people and also connect with people that you would have never thought that you would meet.
Yeah, it's crazy what the beer industry can bring. If you go to everyone's backgrounds, we all have such different backgrounds of how we got there, how we got here. Mine's a bit more of I was always a foodie, so it kind of made sense that I stayed in some sort of food. But a lot of people are like, oh, I ran this business, and then I decided one day I don't want to do that anymore. I went into the beer industry, and you're like, cool.
Yeah. I
had a friend that was an engineer, and he had some nice big job, and he went and started out as a keg washer. He's like, I just got fed up with my job, and I wanted to go do something else, so I did that. I was like, good for you.
I feel that I might have a personal connection with that friend of yours.
Yeah. Was that you as well?
Well, I started as an engineer and went into software, and then decided to change to food science. And part of this journey has been starting this podcast to get to learn and get to also meet interesting people like you.
Nice. Yeah. In college, I didn't know. I had it set. I was gonna be a pharmacist. I was like, I'm gonna get this. I shadowed a pharmacist. I ran away. I was like, okay. Didn't know I wanted to be in beer yet, but I ran away. But because I did everything from, I switched my major quite a bit. I was biology, I was chemistry, biomedical, nutrition, food science. And then I fell in love with food science.
One thing that I find to be pretty unique about this industry is because it's booming so much. There's a lot of people that are moving from their fields to here, and that ends up bringing this brain influx of people that would otherwise not be here and will make these crazy connections and process variations and things like that. Do you have any stories of anyone that you've met that have essentially blown you away with how different they are in this industry?
Yes. There's actually quite a few. I knew someone that was a filmmaker that is now in beer, and their social's crazy. It's incredible. It's just they've taken what they were doing prior, brought into this, and pretty sure they're just in distribution, but then all their movies are very creative, very set up to where it's amazing.
That's awesome. Just being able to witness these transitions.
Yeah.
To me, it's something. I'm passionate about beer. I'm passionate about science and communication, and seeing people being able to portray their knowledge in a way that it's accessible to everybody brings me a lot of joy.
I kind of enjoy it also. Like, so I have two sisters, and the three of us are very different. One does something with business, the other one does marketing, and then there's me, the brewer. So whenever people are asking, like, oh, so what do you do? If someone asked me, what do your sisters do? I couldn't give a detailed description of it at all. But if they ask if they get asked, what does your sister do? Oh, she brews beer. Done. Easy. People are like, okay, that makes more sense. But instead of having to do the whole, oh, she's in digital marketing, she does this, this, and this, I couldn't tell them. Love my sisters, but I don't exactly know what they do. They've got good jobs. That's all I know. Good for them.
That's part of the charm, not knowing exactly.
Exactly. And then me is like, oh, she's a brewer. They're like, oh, cool. Perfect. I'm like, yeah, it's pretty great.
So because there is so much diversity in this industry, something that I've been witnessing lately is that there's a big push to be more inclusive. As you may know, the Master Brewers Association has a whole committee dedicated to inclusivity or DEI efforts. What's your perspective on how do you see this industry moving forward, being more inclusive?
You know, I think the beer industry has always been inclusive. So, let's be real. I'm a female, minority, and I've never felt any different than any brewer. I've never been treated any differently. I've always just been a brewer. And so I think it's very big, especially in Arizona. The moment I was moving there, I had brewers reaching out to me, hey, welcome to the neighborhood, like all this stuff. So I was like, this is great, thank you. And so it's always felt very inclusive. And I think the individual brewers guilds do a great job getting everyone together and making sure everyone's included. But I think there are ways that we can go outside of just the brewers and the brewing community right there. Bring a friend, like basically bring a friend nights, bring someone that may not be into beer. That's something where I was trying to get my brewery to do. I think we're working on that, doing like literally a +1 night. So you come, bring a friend, you get discounted prices kind of thing.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I'm working on that. It'll be fun because you do have those people that maybe they're just like, oh, I don't like beer. I don't like how it tastes. Well, maybe you didn't like how it tasted then. Beer is different now. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's probably something we can get that's palatable to you.
That's something that lately I've been pushing with a lot of my perhaps non-beer friends, mm-hmm. which is no matter what you like, there's going to be a beer for you, because there's beers that resemble wine, there's beers that resemble sour cocktails, yep. and there's classic beer, and there's so much more, right?
I like beer that tastes like beer, but there are people that want beer that doesn't taste like beer, which is exactly what is available too. So,
right.
But I think DE&I wise, I think we're on the right track. I think there's still a lot of ways that we can always be more inclusive for everyone. But I think we're very fortunate with our industry that we are already a pretty open and diverse community.
Yeah. If you can sit down with someone and share a beer, you might call them your friend. So this is the perfect industry to do that.
It's true. Like, actually, last night we're in Providence right now, and I was at Union Station Brewery, which is just down the street. Sat at the bar because I was there by myself, didn't know anyone. And this guy, he's a professor at a medical school just here in the area. He and I hit up a conversation. And by the end of it, he was leaving. He was like, bye. And he actually said, bye, friend. And he was like, yeah, I'll see you in a bit. We went to the Firewater event last night. We went to that.
Yeah, that was such a cool event.
That was a cool event. But yeah, so we did that. It was just a good time.
I was yesterday sitting down at a bar in Long Live Beer Works, nearby here as well. And there was this lady who apparently she had visited over 500 breweries.
Wow.
And she sat there, essentially she said, this is what you have to drink here because these are their best beers. So she guided me a beer tour through a brewery. When she left, she gave me a hug and
there
she
you go.
Asked for my business card. So yeah, you're right. This is a pretty inclusive industry.
It is. Obviously, there's always ways we can improve and get better as people and as a community, but we're pretty darn good too. There's not really many, like, you can go to any bar, any brewery and sit at the bar top and strike up a conversation, and from there you will have either more recommendations for breweries to go to, other beer styles to try. Like, you will get something out of it.
Yeah. And
they'll get something out of it too, hopefully.
Marisa, what is next for Marisa?
Oh, wow. Well, I guess what's next is distributing my beer, honestly. That's something that I've kind of challenged myself with, as well as my company's like, hey, let's do this. But we're kind of fortunate. So we, as Look Brewing, we've got the one location that has the movie theater with the brewery, but then we have quite a few other just movie theaters. We've got 5 or 6 in the LA area. We've got a few in Texas, New York, Florida. So we're kind of spread out. So ideally, my first goal, I have local distribution happening where I just go self-deliver kegs and whatnot at a few places in the Phoenix area. We want to get my beers to our Look locations in California. Got to figure that one out. We'll see what happens. But that's our first goal for the rest of this year. Like, the second half of the year is to get a game plan for that going. So we have it in the works. Still working on the whole, got to find a distributor, figure out how we're going to do that. Got to find a distributor that has a lot of keg storage, because we're going to probably do it as a big lump movement. So we'll see what happens, but that's kind of what's next for me that way. I'll be showing some more horses. So I do ride horses. And so lots of horse shows coming up in the fall. The joys of my job is, as long as there's beer on tap, no one really bothers me.
Right.
So as long as I get it done, I'm good.
So talking about that creative freedom, there's also freedom of execution.
Yes. And really, anyone that has met me or knows me, I'm a very organized, like even you, I'm like, so where are we meeting? You're like, I don't know yet. I'm like, okay, where are we meeting? I got to look at my clock here. I got to plan this out.
Yeah.
Because I'm a very much on time and scheduled person. And so I think that really helps when I got this job, that they figured that out right away. They're like, oh no, she can handle herself. As long as all this stuff is good, no one bothers.
Yeah. And to give some context to listeners, we're in a conference. There's a lot of noise in the area where the conference happened, so we didn't even have a place to meet where it would be, let's say, silent enough for taping a podcast. And the hotel bar was kind enough to just open their bar that was closed so that we could tape this interview. So it's pretty cool. Let's just give props to Hilton.
Yeah, definitely. But no, I don't know what else would be next for me. I haven't really thought. I'm enjoying it so much right now that I don't have to think too far ahead yet, work-wise.
Right.
I'll be having my 1 year with Look in a couple weeks. Or August. Yeah. End of August will be my 1 year with them.
It's impressive to hear all of these achievements that you've mentioned in a year. I commend you for that.
Thank you. It's pretty fun. I had a great setup though. So I know the system I'm working on in and out. I've worked on this system minus my 1 year at Mark Anthony. I've had this exact same setup since 2016. It's the same setup that was in Albuquerque. was what was brought here. So maybe the square footage was a little different, but the actual brew house, which is my 7-barrel Prospero system, I know inside and out. I've taken that thing apart more times than I can count. I've banged it with a rubber mallet more times than I probably should have. But sometimes if it doesn't work, just hit it.
Yeah, that works. It works with everything in life, I think.
Pretty much.
Except for people.
Oh, yeah, that's probably true. You don't want to just walk up and smack someone. It'd be kind of funny, but...
Well, Marisa, I really want to thank you for giving us some of your time within this busy setting. I wish you the very best.
Thank you. Look. Yeah, let's do this again.
Yes, certainly.
Yeah.
Well, you heard it here. This was Marisa Bernal with Look Cinemas in Chandler, Arizona. And she gave us a little bit of an insider's look at what it is like to be a brewer in a cinema setting, also in a little bit of a brew pub sort of setting. Someone that has a very interesting background from food science to winemaking to beer making. So that is just to give you all a little bit of an idea of what you can achieve when you have a unique background and you put it to good use. So cheers. Till the next time. See you later. Este episodio fue producido y editado por Cristian Mercado. La música es producida por el señor Pedro Lavezari. Para más información sobre la música del señor Pedro Lavezari pueden visitar a Bandcamp o seguir el enlace en las notas de este episodio. Acuérdate de seguir a The Food Engineer Podcast en todas las plataformas sociales. También acuérdate de que ya salió a la venta Brewing Notes, un journal o una bitácora cervecera donde puedes escribir todas tus recetas de cerveza. Búscala en Amazon o en las notas de este episodio. Hasta pronto.